Welcome, everybody, to another Lessons from the Front. I am your host, Todd Boating. We are fortunate enough to have Carry the Load continue to sponsor this podcast. I guess we're not getting kicked off just yet, so thank you to Carry the Load for all that Carry the Load does. And as my guest today, I've got a fantastic guest, a very unique guest, and his name is Mark Devine, former United States Navy SEAL. That's not what makes him unique unto itself. Mark has continued to thrive in the civilian world, which is not something that we can all say coming out of the military. So, Mark, I just want to say welcome to Lessons from the Front.
Thanks for having me here. It's a real honor. Appreciate it.
Well, again, thanks for taking the time. You have you've seen a lot, you've done a lot in your career already. You spent a lot of time, I think, reflecting on your career and your service. And that's where I think your books, which we're going to talk about later, really come into play. I've read a couple of your books now. It's easy to see that you've spent a lot of time reflecting on it because you're really open to sharing your scars, which to me is one of the true leadership traits. So before we get into any of that, though, we always want to know, who was Mark Devine before the military?
Yeah. How much time we got?
As much time as you need.
Actually,
but I'm not a licensed therapist, so I just want to throw that out there.
Oh, darn. Shoot. I was hoping to get a little freebie here. Well, I probably should start by saying I didn't join the military until I was 25. And nor did I have plans or designs like a lot of the people I train who at 14 decide they want to be a Navy SEAL or Army Ranger or, fly jets. And they just radar lock on that. Or they grew up in a family with, military veterans, and it just seems to be a good idea for them to follow that path. Or they're super patriotic as a result of something like 911 and they want to go serve. I had none of that. In fact, I grew up in a really small town upstate New York. My family is a business family, had a company that had been around for over 120 years. So it's multi-generational. I was pretty much psychologically groomed to go into business, to basically take over that business. I went to Colgate University in upstate New York, a small liberal arts school, graduated with an economics degree, and immediately took a job down in Manhattan with a big accounting firm.
So you're academically challenged. We can hear that right.
Yeah, I was. Well,
that was obviously said in jest for those of you who don't know Colgate.
Interesting. That does tie into the who I was. Because I really, though I performed really well academically, I really lacked confidence. And I lacked kind of a sense of directionality in my life. And so I truly was doing what a lot of people do. And this is nothing unusual, and nor is it wrong, but I was just kind of following the script that was really written for me, laid out for me, both culturally and through my family. And so there I was, Coopers and Lybrand, which later became PricewaterhouseCoopers. I'm working my way toward becoming an auditor and a consultant, and also going to NYU Stern School of Business to get my MBA at night. So the package looked pretty appealing from that perspective of that script of getting into corporate America, finding success, making money, then maybe, going back to bring those skills to the family business, continue that legacy. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like it's a super valid path to take. Todd, it just wasn't my path. And probably the most significant thing that happened to me in those 4 years that I ended up being in New York, getting my MBA, becoming a certified public accountant, working for multiple clients in the finance industry as a consultant and an auditor, was that I began a practice of meditation through Zen, a simple practice, with a martial arts master who I had stumbled upon. I wanted to get into karate or a martial art, and I stumbled upon this guy. And it was very fortuitous that he was also a Zen master who brought that training into his martial arts. It's very rare to have those two combined in the West the way that he combined them. And I took to that really, there's something about the way I was brought up, and we could get into that, but there's probably more of a psychological bent to that caused me to really, really appreciate and gravitate toward the Zen training, which was just sitting in silence. I believe now in retrospect that it reminded me a lot of the escapism that I participated in whenever the family violence kind of rose up, I would slip out the back jack and head into the wilderness. And that was kind of like my meditation. And so when I found Zen, I was like, holy cow, here I am in the middle of this concrete jungle, Manhattan, 20 million people teeming around me, constant noise. And I could sit on this bench and find that same silence that I found in nature in upstate New York in the Adirondack Mountains. That was a long introduction, but who I was changed dramatically from this kid who really didn't have a clue, was following the drumbeat of, society and my parents to go make a lot of money and be successful in those outer materialistic ways. And then I sat down at a little meditation bench, and 4 years later, I was in the SEALs. It's pretty fascinating, actually, when you think of it that way.
No, it really is. And, you kind of glossed over a piece that I know you've told me before you're willing to share, but I think it's a very important piece that really tied into who you were and why you were drawn into service. And that was your home life.
Mm-hmm.
By your admission, by things, that I've read in your book, it was not pleasant. And I know that, you probably thought you were alone at that time, the only one going through something like that. And there's probably a lot of people out there, even some that may be watching this,
Mm-hmm.
that feel like they're alone. What happened? I mean, what
Well,
was it that you had to really deal with?
yeah, I don't think what I dealt with was anything unusual, right? Everyone has their pros and cons of, the familial life. Um, and for a long time, I think that I played the blame game or the victim game, and said, well, the violence from my father, caused me to shut down a certain way, or the relationship between my mom and dad, created these patterns. And all of that's true, right? That's what happens when we grow up in a family and there's withheld love or violence or rage or any type of insert, whatever it is. Human beings experience trauma, particularly in the earliest stages of their life. And then that trauma creates the emotional patterns that we then live out, and we either just live them out and deal with it, or we take a look at them and begin to question, like, hey, what caused this? Why is this pattern causing me to react a certain way, often in negative ways that are holding me back or not allowing me to see maybe my own brilliance or my own creative expression or my calling in life?
Yeah,
And
they
so
become metaphoric ceilings.
they become ceilings or cages, right? And I literally agree with that. I felt like as a teenager, I was trapped in a prison of my own making. But, and I say my own making because it really was my mind that had caused my emotional state to really shut down. Now, ironically, this is exactly the type of upbringing that would make someone absolutely thrive in a military special operations environment, right? And so I can see the goodness in it. And I can see exactly why I was born into this family and exactly why I needed that type of upbringing. So I actually honor my parents for it. But there was pain associated with that, just like there is in any kind of trauma. And then when I see, and I've done a lot of podcasts myself, I hear of other people's trauma, I often want to stop talking about it because, mine was probably minor, ridiculously small. And there was a lot of really good things that my family brought to me. And so, it's important to not overplay, but also to appreciate how trauma creates those ceilings, and that the only way out of the prisons that we created for ourselves is to become self-reflective, self-referential, and to develop that awareness that we have the capacity, and only we have the capacity, to unlock that prison door.
The upbringing that you had, you didn't even realize it was preparing you for the SEAL teams.
Didn't have a clue. No.
Then you come across because you said there was no military in your background, in your family's background.
Well, my dad was in the Army because a judge told him, you either join the Army or you go to jail. So he said Army before the judge. Yeah, A or B. A. So he
Well, see
went to the
that's part of that academic excellence that is in your background.
right. He
He was
chose
smart. He
wisely.
knew.
He was smart. So he spent 2 years in the 11th Airborne, which was disbanded a couple of years after that. The morale was
Okay, I didn't
horrible.
realize that.
They were supposed to be part of the European occupation. You know, now we're in the 50s and like they didn't have much to do. They were drinking a lot. And so my dad's experience in the Army was maybe just a little bit better than jail. So he never talked about it. You know, joining the military for my family was like throwing everything away. They did not want me to have anything to do with it. And when I told my mom and dad that I was, you know, walking away from my brilliant career and joining the SEALs, they literally, I mean, they were just, I literally stopped them in their tracks and left them speechless. And then my mom starts crying. She's like, Navy SEALs, aren't those baby killers? Because the SEALs had this vicious reputation out of Vietnam, right? Of course,
Well,
it's all
and I
lies.
was going to ask if that had to do with Vietnam. I felt certain
Yeah.
it did because, you were joining about the same time I was. May
Mm-hmm.
have been a couple years behind you, but that was my mother's reaction when I joined the Marine Corps. She's
Was it?
like, you know, we've been talking. Maybe what you need is the military, but we weren't thinking the Marine Corps. I mean, and it goes back to the reputation out of Vietnam. And
Right.
you use the term baby killer. How many times did we hear that in our early days of service?
It's horrible. I know.
So,
Right.
okay, so you chose the Navy SEALs because you were driven. Some of this had to do with. I mean, was it real conscious that you said that's what I'm going to do because of this, or was it more a matter of, my understanding about the military is if I want to push myself to the very edge, this is where I need to be. Is it,
It's
can you describe how, which,
more of the latter, but I didn't know about the SEALs, which is ironic. Again, there was not a lot of information back in the 80s about the Navy SEALs. You're aware of that, right?
right.
They were a secret organization. There were only several hundred of them, and there was no movies. There were a couple old Vietnam era books, which I ended up finding, but there just wasn't information out there like there is today. So, and it's kind of one of the things I teach about finding your calling to my clients today is like finding your calling is a very unusual process, right? It doesn't jump right in your lap, right? It's not something that you can think your way into with your rational mind. At the same time, you have to use your rational mind to think about, well, am I doing the right thing now? What is good about this? What do I not like about this? If I don't like it, can I make it better? Maybe it's just, maybe I'm not getting paid enough, or maybe I just need a different job. But there's something telling me that it's not right. I'm misaligned. I had all that going on and I was journaling and I was thinking, why do I not feel good or right in this corporate thing? Should be fine. Like all systems go, MBA, CPA, climbing the corporate ladder. Everyone else says I'm rocking it, but I don't feel right. It doesn't feel good. So then I had to ask better questions, and I've heard this said before, so this is nothing miraculous, but the quality of your life is really dictated by the quality of the questions that we ask. And so I started to ask better questions, right? If,
Interesting.
if this isn't right for me, then what could be? Now, this is where I began to open up my mind and start to sense that there was more to it than just thinking, right? Rational thinking, left brain rational thinking, which is what we're taught is the nature of mind. Well, it's not. It's just one aspect of your mind. And we don't usually use that very well either because it's full of biases and these emotional shadow elements that I talked about that most people aren't aware of, and they just let them play out. So even the rational mind is not to be trusted. So where I found the rest of my mind was sitting on that bench and in silence. And so in silence, now your brain starts to slow down. You get into those alpha rhythms, sometimes even a theta, while you're still awake and aware. And then you kind of decouple from the thinking mind. You're not engaged in thought. You might have some thoughts, but eventually what happens is your mind learns to almost like metacognitively separate, like you'd separate a hard drive
Mhm.
into part of your brain that can observe your thinking, and then the part of your brain that engages in thinking, and you begin to see that they're not the same. So you disidentify with your thoughts. So instead of, after about a year on that bench, I didn't think of myself as I am Mark Divine, MBA, CPA, this and that. I just was able to see those things as ideas that are now being acted upon, that are coming to fruition, but I don't identify as that. I was something much more. Now, everyone, especially males, have that kind of warrior energy or warrior archetype, but this is more than that. This is like, I'm meant to be a warrior. Like, I've been a warrior probably for many lifetimes. I'm supposed to go out and finish the job. And I can't do that in this corporate pattern. I'm not a corporate warrior. I'm something else. So once I started to really jive with that and be like, yeah, that feels right. That feels right. I don't know what to do about it now. So then I had to re-engage my rational mind and be like, if that's what I'm being pointed toward, how would I play that out in this world? How would I play that out? Could I do that in the corporate world? No. Could I do that back at the family business? No. Could I do it as a teacher? No, not now. Could I do it as a fighter jock? Yeah, we're getting closer. Could I do it as a Marine? Damn straight I could. And so I started a process I called putting on the uniform, right? So I would visualize myself as a fighter pilot, going through everything I could think about, right? Checklists, getting in the cockpit, taking off, flying at Mach 2 or whatever, being in a dogfight. And I started to feel into that. And then I started to feel into being a Marine. Like, what would that feel like? Everything I could think about, I'd read some things. Another one I looked at as being a roughneck, like, what would it be like to be a roughneck and, on an oil rig platform somewhere? Like, it's a pretty gritty lifestyle.
Yeah.
All of these things had a sense of adventure, danger, requiring athletic prowess, great self-awareness and leadership capacity in dangerous situations. So while I was going through this process, I was walking home from either the dojo or work one night, and I came across a Navy recruiting office. And I looked into the windows. I'm like, I wonder what the Navy's up to. And I saw this poster, and literally I stopped in my tracks and I just stared at it for, 20 minutes or so. And the poster didn't say anything about the SEALs, but across the top it said, "Be someone special." And then it had pictures of SEALs doing cool stuff, like free falling and this little mini submarine with these, two frogmen swimming outside of it. And, a sniper in a hide site you could barely find. You'd have to look hard. I was just transfixed. And that's when I knew that was it. So it's not like I had this menu and SEALs was on it. It's like it was revealed to me that I was meant to be a warrior. I started looking at different options, and then the universe basically served up the SEALs to me by putting me in front of that poster.
But what's interesting is that, the youth you described and having to kind of go off by yourself, get away from everything and everyone in order to get in the place really where you were comfortable. Your background from an athletic standpoint, if I remember correctly, you were a swimmer in college. A lot of the things that you describe are actually very solo practitioner.
Good point.
In execution. Yet, and so when you said fighter jockey, that's where my mind would have gone. Had I not known everything else, I would have thought, here's a guy that, okay, he's drawn to service, but fighter jockeys, there's a lot of solo practitioner there. That doesn't mean they don't have a wingman. We know that. But you picked the one path that probably has more. I mean, everybody knows about I don't know if everybody knows, but you guys have swim buddies and you can't do anything without your swim buddy.
Right.
You picked probably the one thing that has more team and social element within your group than anything else you could have done in the military.
That's right.
That's a little bit of a
reason for that, because, that spirit told me that the reason, or one of the main reasons that I was meant to be a warrior, that I needed to get on that path, was leadership, right? So I've used the term warrior leader. That is the most challenging leadership environment in the world. And you can't lead in the military, as you know, as a Marine, you can't lead without team. Like, there is no solo leadership. But if you're a fighter jock, yeah, you can go up and you're kind of leading your airplane. and you might be leading your wing, but that is pretty much a solo thing, like you said, relative to a small spec ops unit or running an
Right.
infantry battalion or a platoon in the Marine Corps. So I knew that whatever I was going to do, if it was going to be in military, it had to be up close and personal, gritty, and I had to be leading men and women in situations where their lives were in my hands, in my decisions anyways, and that we were either together going to get through this, or I had a real opportunity or possibility of killing myself or other people. For some reason, that just was that was the calling, and the SEALs fit that perfectly. You know, my background as a swimmer and endurance athlete, comfortable in science, that all also worked out perfectly well. But if I hadn't been also willing to take my eyes off myself, put them on my teammates, to really make it about the team, I would have failed. I wouldn't have even made it through SEAL training. Because SEAL training is all about the individual's ability to subordinate themselves to the team as while simultaneously performing at an elite level. So it's very, very unique. And it's one of the reasons that most people fail is they don't understand that. They just work on the elite performance at an individual level. They don't recognize that that's great. You got to do that. That's a prerequisite, and you got to maintain that. But it's really about your team. That's why, like, some of the first people to quit or get rolled out are like the prima donna, captain of the football team, super stud, everything came easy to them types.
Right.
They don't make it.
So obviously you got to experience a lot of things. You came in during peacetime. And so what were the years that you were in? Was it 87 through?
I ended up going to OCS in 90.
90. Okay.
89, 90. Then I went through BUDS in 1990. I served my first active duty stint up through 97, mostly a Team 3, SEAL Team 3, and then
Okay.
SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1 in Hawaii, which is the mini submersible team. And then I got off active duty, but stayed in the reserves. And that's when I became an entrepreneur. And then I was recalled in 2000 and served in Middle East and Northern Africa. And then I was recalled again to go to Iraq in 2004. So all told, I ended up doing like 9 years of active duty and 11 years of reserve time. Retired as a commander in 2011. So 20 years of total service, but, a little less than half was active duty, in the field, kicking down doors and stuff.
So, as we title the podcast, Lessons from the Front, is there any single experience, anything that you recall on a regular basis, anything that really, that you can point to that really shaped who you are, how you operate today, things that other people might do well to learn from?
Yeah. Well, like many military guys, especially in the SEALs, there's nothing but stories. And, with a good beer, we could, and a fire, we could tell some yarns, right? We could spin some yarns. I'd like to share two. One of them is one you mentioned, is from the first chapter of my book, Staring Down the Wolf. And this is really about not letting a personal failure define your life, even if it's a big one. And also from a different perspective, for leaders to allow for second chances when those that they on their team have a failure. And because, one of the things we learned in the SEALs at a team level, and this is more tactic, strategy and tactics, was that there's no perfect op, there's no perfect mission. Failure is your friend. Failure becomes your constant companion. And so we don't define our success through, or, we don't define things in binary way, like success and failure. We define things in how fast we can learn and get to the objective, and having that objective look somewhat like we originally envisioned it, right? Like victory looks something like that. And then we're going to fail our way forward toward it. And the faster we can fail our way, or iterate our failures toward that acceptable outcome, then the better we are as a team. It's one of the reasons SEALs are so darn effective. And we had a saying that failure is not an option that a lot of people misunderstood, because they thought that meant you can't fail. And the reality was, it meant that the word failure is not an option, because that's all we're going to experience. It's just failing our way to success, because you just replace failure with learning moments, right? We learn how not to do it. We learn how to do it. We learn how better to do it. We learn, what to avoid. And, we try everything until we find a way or make a way, right? Or we're told to stand down. So I learned that strategically and tactically, but I had to learn it in regards to my own life as well, because your life has no perfect plan either. And the enemy of circumstance has a say. And for my circumstance, one of the things about my family of origin was alcohol abuse, ran multi-generational on both my parents' side. And my dad was certainly part and parcel of that. And so I learned to use alcohol, to kind of maybe feel a little bit as like my blanket, when things got tough, have a beer or two. And because I was so disciplined and athletic, I wouldn't let it interfere with those things. And so I could go months without drinking. But then, at the end of the season or at the end of a training mission, we go to town, right? And I always overdo it, right? With that kind of binge thing. I wouldn't go for days, but, one night, right, is all I needed. And bad things could happen, right, with that kind of paradigm. And so bad things did happen once. Not real bad. I just went out, party with my team. I was a junior officer at SEAL Team 3. I just come home from my second deployment. I was spooling up my new platoon. In fact, I had gotten orders to go to SEAL Team 1 from SEAL Team 3, but the commanding officer at the time, a guy named John McTighe, needed an officer to run a platoon because someone had either gotten injured or something. And so he came and personally asked me to stay for another tour to run another platoon. I was like, I couldn't let the guy down. So I said yes. So 3 months into this workup, I was the kind of officer, the SEALs, as you know, have really tight relationships with their enlisted guys. We go through training side by side. We do everything together. When we're not in garrison, we call each other by our first names. And I didn't go to a OCS. I went to OCS. I didn't go to like ROTC or the Naval Academy where I had 4 years of conditioning. I was like 8 weeks, just dead water, and I was an officer. So I thought a lot of that protocol was shit anyways. And anyway, it got me in trouble because I went out drinking with my guys, and they're plying me with scotch, and I don't do well with hard alcohol anyways. And then I didn't do anything where I caused any damage, but there was a perception that I was faced because I was with my guys out in town. And anyways, and someone had called the police because of not because of something I did, but anyways, it's too long of a story to get into. And I ended up being escorted, which is fine because I didn't want to drive, but I'm being escorted down to SEAL Team 3. And said, okay, you're gonna stay here and drink it off. That's the arrangement that they had.
Stay there and drink it off? You mean sleep it off?
Sleep it off is what I meant. Well, SEALs, we're going to drink it off now. That's
well, I was a little concerned when you said that. So,
but I didn't sleep it off. Right? I decided that everything was fine, and I literally got up and just walked. I left the command and walked back to my apartment, or my girlfriend's apartment. Well, this set off a 3-alarm fire because apparently, anytime someone has a drinking incident and they bring them to the team, they're supposed to like stay there and be kind of under watch or something. Like, this is kind of juvenile stuff for a lot of people, but the military, how they are.
Sure.
And so a 3-alarm fire, they're out looking for me. They think I'm possibly stalking someone, and I'm just like sleeping it off, but now at my girlfriend's place. Anyway, so this thing just ran up the flagpole. Like I said, there's more stuff that went on that I had nothing to do with that caused this. And so I ended up, by the time I was woken up the next morning by my AOIC, he's like, Mark, you got to come in. This has gotten out of control. My career was toast, right? Admiral was involved, and they thought that, this guy had gone rogue. So the new commanding officer at the time who had just come in was a guy named McCraven. And he ended up becoming SOCOM commander, a 4-star admiral later on, but he was a commander at the time. And so he didn't know me from Adam. He takes a look at the situation. It doesn't look good. The optics are not good. And so he fires me from my platoon. And that's really painful, especially for an officer to be fired. And he puts me in the op shop, and I get, this letter of reprimand or something like that. And Man, am I stung, man, because I was ranked number one officer at the command, and everybody loved me, and I was doing a great job. So it seemed like my career was just absolutely toast at the time. And so I was there for about 3 months, and that's during that time I get these orders to go to SDV Team One, and I'm thinking, yeah, maybe I want to get out. My motivation was really hurt. And then McCraven, they do their investigation. They find out that there was a lot of misinformation, and that I didn't do what someone had claimed that I did, and that the whole thing was way blown out of proportion. But the damage was seemingly done. So McCraven came to me, and he offered me a second chance. And he said, Mark, first of all, I apologize. We definitely overreacted in this, and I'd like to make it right for you. So I'd like to give you another platoon here, Team 3, and send you to language school, and I want you to go over to the Middle East and, run a platoon over there. And I was really struck by that ability of his, or that leadership trait, to where he was able to admit that he made a mistake and to give me a second chance. I didn't take him up on the offer, by the way. I decided that I wanted to stay with the path of going to Hawaii with my wife, my new wife. We had gotten married in that time frame, and try my hand at the submersible programs. And I also began to look at it more like I did when I was on the meditation bench. Be like, oh, wait a minute, I see why this happened. I see this pattern that's been playing out. It got me in trouble. Also, I see that this is just an incident. Doesn't define who I am. I'm not a bad person.
Sure.
So what can I learn, and how can I learn and grow from this incident and not let it go to waste?
And this really all kind of came from Admiral McRaven, number one, having the courage to look at the information that he had and do the right thing based on the information that he had. But then more importantly, having the courage to come back and say, you know what? We were wrong. The information that we had was not applicable to the punishment that you received, and we need to reverse that.
Right.
And I think that was one of the things I really zeroed in on in your book, is that in order to be courageous, you must do courageous things. And it was such a simple quote, which I loved, by the way. It really, really struck me. Right. And so what you just described, I think is courageous on a couple of fronts, but you really, you found your way because of someone else's courage that was really trying to help you and grow you.
Right. And he gave me, through that, modeling, helped me to see that mistakes are just events. Don't let it define you. Look for the silver lining of the opportunity, the growth. For me, the silver lining was to look at the shadow that had driven me to that pattern of alcohol use, and to overcome that shadow. Not to like join AA or spend the rest of my life victimizing myself as an alcoholic or something. I didn't think that was it. But what's the emotional pattern and the conditioning that led to me to have that behavior, which led to the breakdown? Like, begin to eradicate that, become a better person. So McCraven helped me become a better person, both through his modeling, but also by like catalyzing this moment of growth and awareness that, for leaders, there's no amount of strategy and tactics that can override negative conditioning or negative shadow. It's always, it's always going to breach some critical relational energy between the leader and the led. It's going to show up as a lack of courage to take a look at those things, shows up as a breach of trust or an untrustworthiness, which makes the leaders more transactional, as opposed to we're in it together and this is a transformational relationship. And then the respect is diminished. And you need courage, trust, and respect to really build a relationship as a leader with the team. And then from there, you get this massive growth through and with the team. So I really honor that moment, in my career, is like that breakdown, which changed my trajectory of, top SEAL, going to go to DevGru, which is our elite tier 1 unit, like MARSOC or, Delta Force. And now I'm married and I'm at SDV Team 1, and then I'm on my way out of the Navy. And I look back and I'm like, all that had to happen. It was all happened for a reason. And it led me to discover the creative genius inside me, which led to 5 books and, 3 businesses, and what other people would consider success, like the type of success that people marveled at when I was in my early, my first career as a CPA that I turned my back on, has finally come to me because of the energy that I unlocked through this integrative self-transformative process that was really built primarily on the emotional development.
What I want to throw this up here real quick, for those of you who have not seen it. Here's Mark's latest book, Staring Down the Wolf. And I love that. And I can see behind you the
Yep.
wolf's eye. It took kind of a minute. I'm like, there's a green spot on the
That's me. I know. I just love that picture. So yeah, I'm
but
staring down the wolf in that picture.
I love just the very concept of staring down the wolf. The wolf can be an incredibly intimidating animal, but it's a beautiful animal. It's a
Mm-hmm.
majestic animal, but man, it can be a dangerous animal
Yep.
unless you learn to really to get into their mind and not
Mm-hmm.
try and overcome them, but just
Right.
understand them. So,
Understand them. It's mutual respect, right? No, I'm not
yeah,
suggesting that anyone actually like go up into the tundra and find a big bad wolf and stare it down.
I
That's
wouldn't recommend it either,
I
but
wouldn't recommend it until you're like really spiritually advanced and you can have a mutual understanding, right? And that's maybe 1 or 2 people on this planet.
it'd make for a good SNL skit, though.
It sure would, yeah. We're talking about the wolf of fear and the wolf of courage. You use the term, the courage wolf resides in your heart, and the fear wolf is basically your brain. It's that left brain that's constantly obsessing and thinking and is going to react negatively to the first sign of trouble. And so, in order to really get into your heart and be more heart-centric leader, you got to first stare down that negative wolf that's in your brain, in your mind. A lot of people try to do it the other way. They say, open your heart, or servant leadership. But if you have all that reactionary conditioning and negative processing, and the brain itself is wired to be 5 times as negative as it is positive, and then it's full of all the negative conditioning from social media, the actual media. I mean, look what's happened in this country, just incredible negative energy. And so you've got to turn away from that. You've got to stare it down and turn away from that cognitively, and then emotionally open up to the courage wolf of your heart. Now, I also use a term in my training called from the Japanese warrior traditions, kokoro. So kokoro means to merge your heart and your mind into your actions. So this is probably the outcome of training to eradicate fear-based conditioning and negative thinking, and to override the shadows and the biases of your brain, while simultaneously opening up your heart, which, is really your spiritual center, and being able to lead from the heart, but with your mind clarified of all that negative crap, so that you can make much better decisions that don't have negative second and third order consequences, aren't about your ego or selfish needs, but are for the benefit of all. And wow, this type of thinking leads us also to be more inclusive and world centric, whereby we recognize that we have this sameness in all of us. I don't care whether you're Chinese general or Admiral McCraven or Mark Devine, right, or Todd. We have this sameness. And when you see the sameness, then you can appreciate the unique differences and celebrate them, as opposed to thinking I'm separate from you and, I'm better than you, or my value system is better than yours. So this feeling of kokoro, of heart, mind, merge, and actions, leads to more world-centric, inclusive leadership style, because you feel more love for your fellow human. It doesn't matter what color they are. And man, just as I hear myself say those words, I can imagine, what the world would be like if we actually required, individuals in power positions to be able to lead like this, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a prerequisite somehow.
Well, and unfortunately, you're going on a topic well, we could go 3 more hours on this topic, but
No doubt.
to that extent, you were drawn to a life of service. um, you know, and just like all of us, there was a self-fulfilling side to it. But I mean, you know, we didn't all, you know, answer our call to serve as a matter of martyrdom.
Mhm.
But I'm curious, how do you continue to serve today?
I don't write because I love writing. I don't podcast because I love podcasting. I do it because if I didn't do it, my brain would probably explode. Like there's just something trying to come out of me that needs to come out. And every book I write is torturous, you know, process. And anyone who's listening as an author knows exactly what I'm talking about. But until my spirit says don't write anymore, I got to write. So that's one way I serve, right? Is trying to help others see more of a little bit more clearly through whatever words come through me. And I don't really take any credit for that, and help them grow. So that's very inspiring to me. And so, assuming I'm successful in connecting with people, then more people buy my books, more people listen to the podcast, more people are inspired to maybe take control of their own inner domain and begin to move toward positivity and courage, and trust and respect and world centrism. And then simultaneously, my business, Unbeatable Mind, has a mission to train and inspire 100 million people in this integrated development program that I was talking about, the 5 mountains: physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, spiritual. And we're doing that primarily through training coaches, executive coaches who work with leaders and teams. We have 400 in certified coaches right now. Our goal is to have, 10,000 in 10 years. So that's a BHAG. And we have 27 countries involved. It's pretty cool. And then I started a foundation because I'm really passionate about helping former teammates, not just SEALs, but all vets who are really suffering from post-traumatic stress. So the Courage Foundation is bringing this similar training, but with military certified coaches to individuals who are suffering from post-traumatic stress, so that we can help them heal and find purpose and find teaming again. Because those are, you can send a vet through a yoga program or teach them box breathing or something like that, and it's going to be helpful. But as soon as they get back to their structure in their dark place, they don't have a team, they don't have a coach to hold them and pull them up when they fall down, and all those old patterns start settling, and then they're still in trouble. So we have a year-long program where we help these military vets. We guide them along this journey back to integration and wholeness again. So that's
So
service to me.
in your experience with treating post-traumatic stress, do you ever really beat it? Do you ever really overcome it? Or, excuse the pun here, do you just learn how to stare down the wolf?
I think that is overcoming it, but it's always part of who you are. The question is, what's your relationship with who you are? And if you have a broken relationship with this version of yourself that thinks, has a guilt, survivor's guilt, or battlefield shame, or it's usually emotional, moral issues that cause post-traumatic stress. The stress itself, you can bleed off, and you can deal with things like breath work and yoga and, electrostim and whatnot. So it's the emotional and moral injury. So we have to bring moral courage and emotional courage back into the vets, and then they develop a new relationship. Their sense of self evolves. They develop self-esteem and optimism and positivity again. So yeah, but it doesn't mean you can eradicate what happened to them. It's always going to be with them, but you can eradicate the relationship to what happened to them. And I think that's true of any type of emotional development. You can't, if someone was sexually abused as a child, you can't take that away. You can't pretend it didn't happen. You can't erase it from their memory, but you can help them develop a new relationship with how they see how that affected their life, and to see also maybe that there's some good things, maybe there's some strength that it gave them, or there's a way that they can turn those lemons into lemonade through helping other women heal. There's always a way to recontextualize, reframe, and reboot a life if you have the courage to take a look and to deal with it.
Courage, big word. Well, the name of the podcast is The Unbeatable Mind. I would encourage people to go out and listen to a couple of episodes. You'll hear a phrase referred to as box breathing, something that I'd like to get a little more intelligent about, because
Hmm.
it's pretty simple, but it sounds like it's extremely effective.
It
The
is.
book is Staring Down the Wolf. That's the latest of the 5 books. I certainly would encourage reading that. Again, you've got some really good stuff in there. And the final thing is, number one, I want to say thank you for your service. And it's, we've got the Marine Corps birthday today as we record this.
Yeah.
And
Happy birthday.
yeah, well, thank you. I've been waiting for you to say that the whole time, Mark. I
Semper
mean,
Fi, Semper Fi. The SEALs motto is a nod to the Marine Corps motto, and ours was Semper Gumby, right? This is a little Gumby character, so we're always flexible,
that's right.
right?
That's right.
But
That was when we were growing up, and I remember seeing Gumby on Saturday Night Live. I was like, I have no idea what that means, but Eddie Murphy was really funny doing it. Well, the whole Semper Gumby thing got around to the Marine Corps at one
did
point
it?
too.
Good.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely, because that was the Semper Gumby. Here we go again.
Yeah,
Always flexible.
gotta be flexible. If you don't like the
But
plan, just wait a minute. It'll change.
but thank you very much again for your service. And the final question I have for you is a matter of carry the load. Um, it's very, very important to us that we honor those who have made the ultimate sacrifice
Hmm.
for all kinds of reasons. And what I'd love to hear from you is your answer to this question: who are you carrying?
I'm carrying the load for my teammates in this spec war community, men and women who've sacrificed so much, because I feel, I'm most connected to them. But I feel connected to all military men and women around the world, but specifically for the men and women of Naval Special Warfare,
Is there
because
anyone in particular who's gone before us that you?
one of my teammates, I often think about and really honor him is a guy named Lou Langlis. He was in my platoon at SEAL Team 3. When this incident we talked about happened with
Mhm.
McCraven, and all those individuals in that platoon are still wonderful friends of mine. But Lou went on to SEAL Team 6, had an incredible career there. And he was one of the ones that went down on with Extortion 17, with the DevGru or SEAL Team 6 troop that was going to go provide some quick reaction for a Ranger battalion that was in a wicked firefight, and their C-17 got shot down. It's his largest
Yes.
loss of SEAL life in one, SEAL lives in one incident. So I had some others on that plane that were friends, but Lou and I were really close. So yeah, so I'll carry Lou's load.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. So,
Yeah.
Mark, it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to meeting you in person one day. We'd love to have you out for our Memorial March
Hmm.
somewhere along the West Coast,
That would be great.
or here in Dallas. So, for all
Awesome.
of you out there in America, thank you very much for tuning in. We appreciate everything you do for us in support of us, while we try to do what we can in support of you. And remember, always have a very good answer to the question: who are you carrying?